Okay, team, welcome back to the Anchor of the Week, where we have hard conversations, hear people's stories, and challenge perspectives. Team, this is a bit of an intro to our episode that we've just filmed. We just wanted to give a bit of context before we go into it and leave no space for any confusion.
That's the key here. But yeah, what you guys are about to see is a conversation we had with Ian, who is a Hare Krishna. A really interesting conversation.
Great chat, yeah.
A super great chat. Honestly, a super great guy. Loved talking with him. And he just loves to share, which is amazing. But yeah, I think for us, it was a very interesting and like a learning curve episode in general. But yeah, because obviously there are a lot of things that but this is the reason why we have this podcast, is to have these hard conversations with people that maybe you don't agree fully with. And obviously, as you guys know, like, we are Christians and we're in our worldview series. So this is someone with a very, very different worldview than we have. And so a lot of this episode is honestly just kind of unpacking that. And because sometimes I think we think that people think the same as we do, or we know people like think differently than us. But I think to actually hear someone else's worldview that's so drastically different was really interesting. Yeah. But I think the crazy thing is, though, as well, is like a lot of times like the language used in this conversation as well makes it seem like it's not a drastically different worldview. Which I thought that was interesting, is maybe one of my biggest takeaways from this whole conversation, and something that, you know, as you're listening, you can kind of maybe look out for too, is just along those lines, you know, like, are we saying the same things, but are we meaning the same things? And I think when you're talking about worldviews, that is actually a very important question that you ask, because then it's easy to say, okay, we think the same way, or more or less the same. But it's that critical thinking that we always talk about to, okay, like, how are we, like, you say this, but what do we actually mean by that? Did we actually perceive the world the same, you know? So I think that's something to look out for.
And I think just obviously we want to make sure that people know that we are Christians, and where we stand is very different to where Ian stands, who you guys will meet in a minute. And so we just wanted to clarify that before you guys do go into the conversation. And also, I think because of the language that was used, and because obviously, you know, if you guys going into the conversation are kind of knowing and understanding that we are kind of hearing what this guy's story is, literally, obviously learning a bit more about what he does believe and why, and the practices and all these things. And it's more of us learning about it rather than us sitting there and agreeing and understanding and appreciating all that sort of stuff, you know, because I think that's a bit maybe unclear at times. And I think, we just wanted to come on before and just make sure that there was, like, you guys had this context before going into the conversation, just to make sure there was no kind of misunderstanding or anything that was misinterpreted in between the lines. So this is us doing that.
It is a great conversation.
It is,
honestly. Ian is such a great guy. And like, again, I feel like I learned so much just about where other people come from as well. And I think there's a lot of things that we can even like personally take away like from the conversation, especially like the aspect I think we talked about like at the end as well, of just like being okay to ask these questions and have a space, and how important that is to have a space where you can ask questions about what you believe. And I think that's something as well to keep in mind as we dive into the conversation.
So here is our interview with Ian.
Team, we have such a fun episode today.
Oh, we are so pumped.
Yes, we have our guest Ian, as you can see if you're watching this.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Ian, we've never met you before today, have we?
No, we haven't.
It's a mutual friend, isn't it? But yeah, we want to dive into what your worldview is. Do you want to just give us a brief background on just who you are, where you come from, a little bit of, even just what you believe, and just give us context.
Right. Okay, so thank you for having me. My name is Ian Nene. I'm originally from Nairobi, Kenya. That's where I was born and raised. I've only been in the UK for around 5 to 6 years now. Right, cool. And I used to be in the acting and entertainment industry. So when I was young, from 12 to 18, I was engaged in the arts. I was on TV in Kenya and in East Africa for that significant period of time, most of my high school life. So I was always on screen performing. Didn't really have much of a childhood in the sense that I wasn't out on holidays, partying, or, having good times with my friends. Most of my time was dedicated to being on set. And so being in that environment, it kind of probed a lot of internal thinking and questioning. When you're around grown-ups, it's kind of, it just rubs off on you. Yeah. And so I finished that when I was around 18, came to the UK to study. Then amidst my studies, I found the teachings of Bhakti Yoga. Something had happened in my family, my mom got diagnosed with cancer. And obviously when something like that happens, it makes you question a lot of things.
Yeah.
So I had
Yeah,
like
for
my
sure, yeah.
what is going on in this world type of thing, and if God truly exists, what's he on about type of inquiry. And that led me magically towards the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, the Bhakti Yoga tradition. And I wasn't unfamiliar with religion because I was born and raised Catholic. I was a devout Catholic. And then I found these teachings and just appreciated the angle that they were presented in. And so after graduating, I decided I'll spend some time to peer into the depth and fully understand it before I make a decision of where my life is going.
Yeah.
And so that ended me up living in a temple known as the Bhaktivedanta Manor. It was donated by George Harrison from the Beatles. He used to be in the similar tradition,
Yeah,
right?
okay,
yeah. I didn't know. Wow.
So he donated the place where I lived in, which is this 85-acre piece of beautiful land with cows, and it's just this own secluded space. And I was there throughout the lockdown period, which was amazing because I wasn't restricted to like a tiny little space, so it was quite nice. And yeah, I embraced the teachings of Bhakti Yoga to the point where I felt my life should be utilized in somewhat sharing some of the principles to see if it can help anyone in their lives and help them live a better version of themselves as it did for me, and give them some answers that they might be seeking, which maybe might not be explicitly clear in other spaces like that. So yeah, so that's what I did, joined the Bhakti Yoga tradition, and now I'm here with you guys today.
Love it.
Just a brief intro.
Yeah.
That's great.
Right,
That's great.
awesome.
And so how long, because you're a practicing nun, would you call yourself a Hare Krishna?
Yes, so I would call myself a Hare.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the term which we're normally known as, because you know sometimes you see the Hare Krishnas walking down the street dancing. Another way you can refer to us is Bhakti Yogis,
Okay.
because what the Hare Krishnas are essentially practicing is Bhakti Yoga, which is the yoga of love. Love meaning that true love comes from God. So it's the yoga of connecting with true love from God, like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so how long have you been practicing for?
So now I've been full-time getting myself around it for now around 5 years. 4
wow.
to 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then recently I made deeper committed vows. So kind of like how someone would do baptism and decide, okay, that's when I'm turning my new leaf. So I kind of also made that commitment and surrendered myself to my spiritual teacher, who's now guiding me and kind of helping me maneuver this crazy thing called life.
Wow.
Like that.
And so what is the kind of the core beliefs, I guess, that you guys believe in? Is it, because I think it's a life of reincarnation, is that right? From
Right.
what we've researched a little bit. I'll let you go into
Right.
that,
Okay,
yeah.
cool. So yeah, how to phrase it. It's nice. I love this. I love
Yeah,
this
yeah.
kind of talks. So that's just one of the many principles that
Okay.
I encapsulated. Maybe I can explain it like this. The angle of Bhakti Yoga starts from the perspective that you're not a human being who experiences spiritual things, but you're actually a spiritual being having a human experience. So the
Okay.
core essence of ourselves is that we're spirit souls.
Right.
And you can kind of, I don't know if you've ever played like PlayStation before, and there used to be this game called GTA, which is like a very popular game, right?
Yeah.
And you're controlling this person called CJ. And CJ is kind of moving and doing different missions. So similarly, we as spiritual beings are within this body, and we're controlling this body and maneuvering it in multivarious ways.
Okay.
But unfortunately, this body is temporary for us in this existence. It comes for a period of time. It goes through 4 things: birth, death, old age, and disease. It's impermanent, and it's making all these different connections and relationships and breaking them down. And then ultimately, the body breaks itself down at the time of death, which is unavoidable for everyone. So everyone who's born is going to die. And so we can become so fixated on the fact that we're this body, and we become so attached to it. But then the teachings of Bhakti Yoga are telling us, actually, you're more than this body. You're the spiritual being within this body. And your journey doesn't just end here. After you leave this body, you'll carry on to different spaces based on your level of consciousness and on your level of being. So it's kind of like, we've been here, we've done this in different ways, in multivarious fashions, because spiritual beings are not just in human forms, they're in animal forms as well, they're in plant forms as well, they're in multivarious bodies. And based on the consciousness of the person, they assume that body to facilitate a particular desire, like that, which also gets more scientific, which we can kind of go through. So that's just one of the principles. So we're journeying through that, and but our destination is that we are part and parcel of the Lord. The Lord made us in his own image and likeness. It doesn't mean that when I look at the Lord, I'll see you or I'll see you physically, but it's the quality of the spiritual soul that is fully abundant within the Lord that we have a tiny speck of. So you can look at it like a fire and a speck of the fire, you know? We're kind of like the specks of the fire. We've got God's quality, but his quantity is very limited within us. We have to kind of re-spark it and reawaken it by coming closer to the fire, which is by connecting with the Lord, who is that fire of spirituality, like that. Yeah, so just some of the many. Yeah, but
Okay.
they're all these principles are kind of explained in a very, very different fashion from also what I was understanding as a Catholic, like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is so much.
Please.
Yeah.
12 tangents I can go on just from that, which is amazing.
I know you said 30,
Yeah.
40 minutes, but we can go on.
I know, right?
We
Until they
really
kick us
could,
out.
yeah.
Right.
One thing before we completely move on
Right.
from like the karma and like reincarnation. Sorry, I'm about to talk about karma and karmic
Right.
cycles.
Oh, please.
So from again, like I obviously had to do research because this is not what I practice. But
Right,
one thing
right.
that really caught me was that essentially, like, and correct me if I'm wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but being when you're like a Hare Krishna and you are in this like choosing, I guess, to get closer to that fire, if you will.
Right, uh-huh.
Like this is your chance to then break your karmic cycle so that you can be with Krishna,
Yes,
essentially, right?
yes.
So I think that that's something that really intrigues me because usually when you talk about karma, it's you want to like do good karma to cancel out your bad karma, but you're trying to cancel karma in general, right?
In general,
to break your
exactly.
karmic cycle.
Right.
So then would you say that like for all humans then, like because then like this is our chance, you would say, right? When we are incarnated into a human
Form of life, yeah.
To-
Ooh.
Yes.
There you go,
I know what
yeah.
I'm talking about.
Right.
But like I just want to know like your point or your kind of stance on that because for me that's just a very interesting
Interesting
concept.
thing, yeah, no, for
you
sure.
know, like everyone in this room, you would look at us and say, "This is your one chance, perhaps." To
Right.
Because what happens if I, don't choose to go close to the fire, in this
Right.
life right now?
Right.
And next life, I'm reincarnated to something else that doesn't have the choice. How do I?
How do you...
Would that ever break? You know what I mean?
Right. Cool. I really love that question. That's amazing. So I'll give you this for example. Let's say you've got a cow and you've got me, right? If I'm asleep in my bed and the cow is asleep in its shed, both of us were in the state of sleep, right?
Okay.
We're both in the state of sleep. If I'm hungry and I'm looking for food, and that cow is hungry and it's looking for food to eat, even though it goes for the grass, I go for the fridge, we're both hungry,
Okay.
right? If let's say I grow older and maturity starts to kick in, and the desire for sex life emancipates, and I'm this person and I'm like trying to look for some sexual engagement, and that cow as well wakes up and the urges arise and it's looking for the same kind of engagement. We're both experiencing a similar energy, right? And if, let's say, someone comes and attacks me in my house and I have to defend myself, and someone goes and attacks the cow and has to defend itself, the state of defense and the state of protection is similar. So our experiences are actually not so different. What makes it different is that for me as a human being, I've got a conscious choice behind it. So if you, let's say, put grass and you put a plastic bag in front of a cow, at times the cow might go for the grass, at times the cow might go for the plastic bag. You never know. And that's why we as human beings are more conscious with what we give animals. But for me, I can choose. I'll either have McDonald's, I'll cook for myself, or I'll go to mom's house and mom's going to cook for me, or I'm going to have my
Best
friend.
option.
Yeah.
Right? So I've got all these options and I'm aware of all my possibilities. But animals and other forms of living are not as aware of their possibilities as we are. They're somewhat limited. Why are they limited? Because in their forms, they're trapped in that limitation because there's something particular that each and every form has. So for example, we give people this example. Some people might get, let's say, into a body of a lion and they want to just eat meat because maybe that's where their happiness comes from. So the Lord, being so kind, gives them that body. You eat as much meat as you like. I love you that much. Or let's say I want to soar and just see the world. So the Lord is so kind, he gives me the body of an eagle. And what is my entire life doing? I want to just fly around and experience this world. But I'll always have some limitations in these different forms of life. Or if, let's say, I'm a bear or I desire to be like a bear, I want to sleep, I'm exhausted, I want to hibernate. You know, the Lord being so kind, based on my desire, when I finish this life, might reward me that body so that I can sleep for half my life and experience that which I have, which I'm desiring to experience. Now, these desires are what are trapping us here, because based on these desires, you'll do certain actions and you'll do and you'll have certain reactions. And that's where the law of karma comes in. Karma is really a result of action and reaction. Okay. So for example, if I go to bed early, I wake up early, that's my karma. My reaction is that I've actually gotten up early because I slept early. Or if I study for my test, when the test comes, I'm more confident. That's karma, right? If I punch someone in the face, if I punch Zako in the face and Zako decides to punch me back, that's my reaction. That's karma. So because of our different desires, karma is playing. And different actions are happening, different actions are not happening or are changing or morphing. Now, God is not really involved in that. Because then one can challenge, because God is the ability in man, how comes God then is allowing for bad things to happen or for good things to happen? We've got that free will that's allowing us to have these different actions and reactions. And so God is out of these actions and reactions. And so if we want to be connected with God, as we understand from the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, or connect with Krishna, who is God, as we understand him, then we have to get ourselves with this cycle of constantly working with action and reaction in this material world. And if we do that, then it becomes easy for us to perceive that reality which is beyond action and reaction. Because action and reaction in this material world is based on desire. And desire, to some degree, somewhat selfish. I'm doing this for me. I want this for my enjoyment. Even someone takes a positive change, it looks good, but it's because I want to be happy. But when we come out of that cycle, we start to do activities because it makes God happy. And what makes God happy is not based on action and reaction of this material world, but it's based on loving service towards him. And so when we're fully connected with God, the karmic cycle of this material world stops influencing us. And then we can actually perceive the Lord clearly within our hearts, within our life, within everything that we experience like that. And it's not just to say that, only people who are practicing bhakti yoga are clearing the actions and reactions. Everyone who's authentically connecting with the Lord and hearing what the Lord is saying, based on their level of understanding and their level of perceptibility, is breaking their karmic cycle. Because that's Lord's power, like that. It's not just for people practicing bhakti yoga. Even Christians, even Muslims, we've got Christians and Muslims who come to our temple on a regular basis. And they feel that actually me turning towards God in the way that I've done is clearing my reactions in a sense. It's making it easy for me to perceive this spiritual reality, because some things are practically changing in their lives. That's just a brief way to kind of explain it, but I hope it makes sense.
No, absolutely.
Please do challenge if.
No. I've so it's very much based on your own actions, like you were saying, and so just for me to get my head around that last little bit.
Right.
So the idea of God is Vishnu / Krishna, is that right? And
I think before we move on as well, we should probably define, because you're saying things like God, and the Lord, right? Which I think,
God, Krishna, the
Yeah,
Lord.
Is it the
so
same thing, or?
So when you say God, what do you mean? Like, what is your
All right. So God, as we understand, is actually a person. He's personal. He's got a form. He's good, just like we have forms. The only reason we've got these forms is because God has a form. That's how we understand it. Not a material form like we have that's based on this body, but he's got a spiritual form that's similar, right? And in his form, he has a particular look. There's a way he acts. There's a way he expresses himself like that. So every time when we talk about, or when I talk about God, I'm referring to Krishna, as we understand him in the teachings of Bhakti Yoga. But it's not different. It's the same God that is in every other religion, because every other religion is just understanding the same Lord based on their level of consciousness, isn't it? So I can give this analogy of, if you've got a mountain, some people are standing at one point of this mountain, some people are standing farther away, some people are standing at a different crevice. We're all looking at the same mountain, but from different levels of consciousness or different levels of understanding. So some people think that God has no form, he's formless. Some people think that God is everything. Some people, like us, understand that God actually is personal. He's got a personal, tangible form, and he's got multivarious forms. So you've heard of Krishna, you've heard of Vishnu, and there's different other forms that the Lord can take out of his own pleasure because he's God. He can do whatever he likes.
Okay, I see.
Like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. Like for me, this is the hard part to like wrap my mind around in that sense.
Yeah.
Again, because for example, Krishna, right, is the best form of Vishnu, right, who is one of the many Hindu gods, correct?
Well, in one sense, yes.
In one sense?
Yeah, because
Okay.
so if you look at Hinduism, because we're not Hindus, at times people connect us with Hinduism and we use that just to communicate that that's who we are.
So you would remove yourself from Hinduism?
Yeah, we wouldn't really categorize ourselves from Hinduism because basically Hinduism is perceiving or having that understanding of certain different demigods who are servants of God who give certain rewards for certain things. Now, this goes into the science of the Hinduism practice, but basically you've got God who's like the supreme personality. And for him, because he doesn't influence this material world, he's got his multivarious agents. So God, let's say like, I'd look at it, let's say like the prime minister. So the prime minister is in the office addressing the world, right? He's like, and he's very formal, he's very serious. But when he goes back home, he's got his daughter piggybacking on his back, you know, right? So it's the same personality, but being perceived in different ways. So you've got God at home, which is the God we want to connect with, God in a personal way, God at home, not God when he's working and doing all magnificent things, but God in himself, in his personality, and that's Krishna. Then when God decides to work and create the material element, he has Vishnu. When God decides to protect his devotee, he has another energy of himself known as Nrsingadev. When God wants to do these things in the material world, he employs certain energies of himself. And then he also employs certain other personalities. So you'll hear Shiva, the destroyer. You'll hear Brahma, the creator. So he'll have all these persons doing certain jobs for him. But he's at home in the spiritual world dancing. And there's that famous saying that one philosopher, I think, once said is that I'll only believe in a Lord who dances. And Krishna is always in the spiritual world, just dancing and having a good time. But he's the Lord. And at the same time, he's got all these energies and agents. So you've got his incarnations of the Lord himself, which do multivarious things. But then, as you know, in Hinduism, you've also got certain demigods who are doing particular levels of service. Ganesh, who's like the elephant god, he's removing obstacles in people's lives. You know, Durga is giving protection in multivarious ways like that. But they're not all God, because that is like a common misconception.
Yeah.
People think that all these different forms that are, you know, different ways they're all God. No, God has got his one form which he which is him.
Because you would
know?
consider yourself then monotheistic, right? Like
we just believe in one God. Yeah. You know.
Right.
But then would you not believe that God is like omnipotent or omniscient if he requires these other demigods to like take care of work for him?
Well,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it doesn't change the fact that he's omnipotent or he's omniscient, that he's all-seeing, that he's all-pervading. He's still all those things, you know. But for our glories, he employs us. For example, God could decide to come and transform all our hearts to turn to him. But he uses people like yourselves to go out on the streets, to serve, to preach, to share the knowledge with others, to open other people's consciousness. Why? Because you're his servant. So he gives you that reward. And when you feel that satisfaction within your hearts, it's the same thing. So similarly, with all the different demigods, they're just servants of God who are employed to do certain things by the Lord, that they get glorified by others. But we all know it's coming from the Lord ultimately, like that.
Interesting.
Right, interesting. And just before we kind of move the conversation on, I guess, but so just so I wrap this around a little bit more, but it's super interesting what you're saying.
Yeah.
So essentially, because the idea of what we researched was the idea of, you know, this life is your opportunity to then be one with Krishna, who what we read was as the best form of God.
Yeah.
And so when but what you're saying is actually it's more to kind of give you the best afterlife. Is that right? Or is that
no? So
is
the
that
best
how it works,
afterlife is connecting with Krishna. Yeah,
Okay.
the best place you want to be is to be with God.
Right.
Because full happiness won't come in our lives unless we're fully situated with the core of our being, who's the Lord.
Yeah.
Isn't it? So our journey afterlife means whatever's going to happen after this life. It just doesn't end here,
Okay.
right? So some people will say, oh, you know, if you die, you know, your body is buried to the ground, right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, like as a Catholic, we used to say this Apostles' Creed, and it's in the hopes that, you know, we'll be dormant at some point, and then Jesus is going to come and he's going to, take care of us and alleviate us from all our suffering.
Right.
But we understand that, no, actually, you won't just be dormant. You'll actually carry on with life in
Right.
different ways.
Right.
And so this is an opportunity to actively try to cultivate your God consciousness so that you don't have the risk, or you're not trying to come back again into this world.
Right.
You want to go back home where we belong in the spiritual world with God, with Krishna, like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because this world, it's very
Yeah.
challenging. We look at like there's great things about this world, which is beautiful. The world's amazing. You meet so many people, but there's so many things that are happening in this world. I mentioned birth, death, old age, and disease. You're meeting people. You're loving all these persons. They leave you. They abandon you. So much hurt. So the material world is like this, and the scriptures actually tell us that it's perfectly like this, to tell us that this is not our home. And anyone who feels comfortable here should have a problem. Yeah, that's
Interesting,
basically it.
Yeah.
You should.
I don't entirely disagree with that.
No, yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. That God has created this world and is giving us all these wide plethora of issues that can be easily solved when we turn to Him. But somehow or other, we're not turning to Him because the systems and the people running things don't even want to turn to God. And so we're trapped in this maze. And it's just all these different difficulties besides all the bliss, right? So there's also elements of bliss, but there's so much suffering. But God wants us to get away from all of that. And so regardless whether it's this life or the next life, you want to be in the best situation so you can get yourself closer to connecting with Him. Or if you do it right, with purpose, with motivation, in this lifetime, go immediately.
Right.
Like
Okay.
that.
Right. And so, what are what's some of your practices then to kind of engage in that the closeness, to come closer to God? I know we've seen like the beads and stuff like that.
Yes, which I actually
which you
brought
actually
with me
have.
because
That's
I was,
cool.
I always walk around with them. They're like,
Okay.
you call them not my accessory because these are really important, but they work kind of like the rosary for Catholics, for example.
Right.
Or, and
I have a lot of questions about Catholicism
Okay.
now. Actually, this conversation, like, what?
Yeah,
yeah,
really
yeah.
quickly. We again, this is all based off of research, so
Right,
what
right.
we found. But it's actually a bit of a theme with ex-Catholics. Is that a good way to phrase it? There's a lot of ex-Catholics in as they become Hare Krishnas and kind of in that realm. Is that a common theme that you found, or is that just the fact that the few
Just
people
the
that
stories
we've
that
we've
heard.
seen,
no,
they've
I
all
mean,
got
we've got
a
people
past.
from everywhere.
Yeah, okay, right.
It doesn't matter. You've got people from atheistic backgrounds.
Yeah, okay.
You've got people from, Islamic backgrounds. You've got people from, normal Christian backgrounds, or even from all different backgrounds, Yeah, you've got different people from everywhere connecting with or choosing to take up this path. And the idea is that it's not about the differences. Like the word religio or the word religion essentially means the knowledge, the understanding, and the loving of God. Right. Now so any practice that I'm choosing, if it's giving me knowledge, the understanding, and the love of God, then it's good for me. Now, but most of the time what we focus on, probably in certain circumstances, is not the knowledge, the understanding, and the loving of God, is lifestyle, how I look, who I'm with, what we do. But actually, no. Knowledge, understanding, and loving of God are the principles. And all religions teach us this fully, But based on one's level of ability to perceive, maybe what someone can read from looking at the Beatitudes in Matthew is more attractive to what someone can read looking at the Bhagavad Gita. So someone who'll stick with Matthew's Beatitudes will go for it because that's where they're getting their knowledge, their loving and understanding of God, like that.
Right.
Yeah.
The only thing I have with that concept is like the idea of truth then is very relative almost.
That was gonna be my question. So is
Right.
truth relative or absolute?
No,
'Cause I
truth
feel
is
like
absolute still.
Yeah.
But it's
Right.
okay. So the
But I
absolute.
guess
okay,
truth
yeah.
is all the way up here.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is how you get
There are
there.
relative
is-
paths.
Yeah.
to
So
get
how?
to.
Yeah. So how you can understand it is all practices are giving us the same truth. God exists. We're part and parcel of God, and our goal is to love and serve God. That's a common theme in all religions, unless it's different in any religion, which probably you can share with me. Isn't
Not
it a
that
common?
I've heard, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a common belief in all practices that we're servants of God. He created us in His image and likeness. We're part and parcel of Him, and this lifetime is meant to be in His service. We're meant to use this life to serve Him.
Right.
And now, based on how I'm supposed to serve the Lord, I'll do it based on how I understand it. And so that's why there's all these varieties of practices getting us to the same absolute God, but based on the level of consciousness that we're in. Now, different practices have got different things that will differ, you know, and that people will be like, okay, wait, but you guys do it like this and we do it like this. And so those are certain subtle differences within each and every practice. For example, you know, you'd have a practice, let's say like in some Christian groups, I know some Christian groups are vegetarian, some Christian groups don't mind eating meat, like they're comfortable eating meat, right? They feel, some groups who feel, no, it's more compassionate to not kill animals. Some people feel, no, it's fine. God has created them for that purpose. You know, Hare Krishnas will come and will say, no, we're vegetarian. No. We don't believe in killing animals at all. They're part and parcels of God like that. But God still loves each and every one of us. So we can focus on, okay, who's right and who's wrong in that instance. But then ultimately there is that activity that person is doing taking them closer to God? If they're sincerely seeking, then they'll know that activity is taking me closer. This activity is not taking me closer, right? So all these religions are giving us the absolute truth, that's the essence. But the detail is subtly different. How each detail is going to be manifested will be different. So in a particular church, they'll have their own practices, their own ritual, their own design. In the Catholic Church, you'll have your own ritual, your own design. If you're to go to like, you know, the temple, you'll have your own practices and your own design. But they're not dissuading you from the absolute truth, but just based on what we can perceive right now, we're receiving it.
So with that idea then of kind of truth being here and we all have our different paths almost. So does that mean you're okay with like us being Christians and the way we go about things because that's what we feel is bringing us closer to God, and then the way you're going is fine, and then let's say a Muslim has their thing and that's their consciousness and that's their kind of idea of getting closer to God. Like, so all these things are happening, even though it feels, because in my mind these are very different beliefs, aren't they?
Right.
But based off on kind of what I've understood from what you've said is that it's actually okay because that's kind of their path that they're on?
In one sense, yes. I think if a person is authentically following any religious practice and not following it to show that, okay, I'm like this, but sincerely in their hearts trying to reestablish their connection with God and everything that God, and identify everything that God has done for them, regardless of what religion they're in, they have they almost will see each other together. They almost will meet. And I know this interesting story of Mother Teresa, where there was an interviewer, I think from the BBC, who was going to interview Mother Teresa, and had flown all the way to go and see her, and she had stalled him for a few hours. And so he was there thinking, okay, I've come all this way, I've traveled all this far to come and see Mother Teresa. And then, you know, after like 4 or 5 hours, Mother Teresa comes out and apologizes. Oh, I'm sorry, I was late. I had to clean the pots. And if I didn't, I wouldn't be setting an example to the people there. You know, I had to do my service. So the principle of service, which is our core principle as Bhakti yogis, is the same principle that Mother Teresa is living with. That actually the goal of our life is service to God, service to his people, you know, like that. So yes, in one sense, these all religions, if followed authentically with love, with sincerity, with the sincere greed to want to actually experience and understand and know and love God, it's absolutely fine. I would say, though, as a caveat to that, if me doing my practice is resulting in me judging you as a servant of the Lord, because if I'm learning that I'm a servant of the Lord and you're a servant of the Lord, and I'm approaching you with judgment, then I don't think as a Bhakti yogi, I'm doing my right thing. I will discern. So if, let's say, I see you smoking, for example, or drinking, with that discernment, I understand there's a part and parcel of the Lord who's going through life at the moment. I won't judge him as an individual because he's actually a part and parcel of the Lord. In this situation, he's going through something. So I will, you know, arrange or situate myself in a way that I'm not negatively influenced by it, you know? So I don't pass judgment onto that other person. Or I don't, as a result of me having this practice, curse others out and say that, you know, they're bad for doing this. I mean, there's some things, obviously, we've had debates about, for example, with the whole vegetarianism topic, which we can probably get into later on. But, you know, we don't judge or hate others If a religion is causing you to hate, when its goal is to know, understand, and love God, then it beats the purpose. Right. So long as we're not judging people and we can be able to live with people with love and connect in actual loving service, then I think it's absolutely fine. But if we're judging, if it's creating a negative element, or we do this like this versus you do this like that, and so you're a bad person and I'm good, then that's like the downside of it, like that.
But do you think there's, in some sense, like the place where you can, because for me, like loving people is also confronting people, right? So like if I see you going down a bad path, I'll want to be like, hey, like I love you, but like you have to kind of like stop. You know what I mean?
Of course, no, definitely.
Or because I was gonna say, is it more of like I'll focus on me and like almost like removing yourself from others?
Well, no. So no. If you have an opportunity to help and you don't, that's violent. You know, they say real violence is not just when you attack someone, but it's when you know you can protect someone and you don't. You know. So in the sense where if you see someone going through a down path, you can share with them, you can try your best to motivate them and, you know, try to gear them towards a better direction, but you're not God, you know? And if they choose to make those choices, you don't put yourself in the middle of it as their lover or hater. But you support and you guide and you pray for them. Actually, the best thing to do, and I've noticed this magically, is that when someone hurts you or someone's going through something really bad, it's always more powerful to sit down with the Lord and just pray and just be like, yo, hey, God, this one is doing something and I need your help. I need your intelligence here. Can you know, that's the best way. And literally, God is so magnificent that because you're sincerely seeking for their well-being, he makes arrangement. You know, he makes arrangement for them to come to you, for them to have different kind of interactions or for something to happen and then they change, you know, like that. So no, it's not like you leave people to suffer. No. But you, if you can, or if you're in an opportunity to be able to open their mind and change their consciousness in some certain elements, fine, great. But at the end of the day, what can we do? I'm also a very feeble human being. Who am I to say that I'm perfect and that I'm the one to guide this person on the right path? But my Lord, you are. You know everything. You're in their heart. You know, in the scriptures it says, Krishna is sat within our hearts as a super soul, which is what we understand as intuition, for example. You know, that inner feeling that tells you to do something and you're like, where did that come from?
So what we would call like the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, exactly. None different in that sense, right? So, you know, he sat within our hearts and he's always connecting with us. So he's in my brother's heart. Why am I trying to cause judgment or hate or, you know, God is going to guide him. Please, God, you know, help him out. He's being resistant at the moment, but no problem. You're the mastermind. You're the main chess player. So you maneuver and place him where he need be. Like that.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah. So I know we talked about the beads.
Yeah.
We did. We're back to the beads.
Right. Yeah. So
I mean, even alongside the beads, what are the kind of different practices you guys do?
Right.
We've heard about the different songs and
exactly.
And stuff like
So what I'll say. So basically, and I touched on this earlier. We're trying to get to know God, understand his personality, understand his qualities. So now, because we in the Bhakti Yoga tradition have God or see God in his personal element, then we've got all these different stories, all these different pastimes that God engages in. And what we normally do is that we're reciting all these different prayers, meditating on these different pastimes of the Lord, all these different activities that the Lord does in his opulence, in his magnificence. And so, you know, for example, I lived in the temple and would wake up early in the morning and would do all these different prayers glorifying our teachers who are teaching us about the Lord, prayers to the Lord himself to get us to engage in his loving service. You know, would recite prayers depicting or being able to experience or to have an understanding of what this spiritual world where we're supposed to be at is like, what our home actually is, which we understand from the teachings is a perverted reflection. No, this material world is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world of our home. And so we're normally reciting the Lord's glorious pastimes, reading the different teachings that he gives, or the different instructions that he gives through his disciples or persons who have re-narrated these stories. And the one way that we also connect with him is through reciting his names. So we see it as a common theme in most practices. Hallowed be thy name. The name is like, the name of the Lord is actually our salvation in this age. And so we glorify and we recite the names of Krishna constantly in the hopes that, it's like if you recite whatever you put yourself around, your mind starts to meditate on. So if you're meditating on gold and you go to sleep, and you're meditating on a mountain somewhat, you might just dream of a golden mountain. So then what we do is we're cultivating our thinking to meditate on God, on Krishna. So even when we're going to sleep, we're trying our best to think about Krishna. When we're waking up in the morning, we're thinking about Krishna. When we're having interactions with others, we're thinking about Krishna, and we're trying to experience Krishna in that same way. So we call out his names mostly through singing. So when you walk down on the streets and you see the Hare Krishnas, they're probably playing some musical instruments, jamming and trying to enthuse everyone, calling out the Lord's names. And then another way we do it is using beads. So we've got like these, which are like mantra beads. You've got 108 beads here. And so on each of the bead, we just recite the name of Krishna. And we carry on and we carry on. We do this for a minimum of 2 hours every day. Some of us are committed to 2 hours every day of full-time meditation. And
That's a long time.
That is a long time.
Yeah, but in the beginning it's so austere. Like I remember when I started, I'd be like,
I can't imagine.
oh my God. And then at times it reaches the point
Like
you
you
just...
get finger cramps.
Yeah, exactly. At times you feel like that. Oh, it's like, you're just calling to call, and it's like, oh my God, I'd rather be doing something else. So I'm trying to call God's name, and then I'm thinking about what am I going to have for lunch? What am I going to do? I have to go meet Zach later on for the interview. Well, you know what? Your mind is going through so many things. But what's love? Love is when there's so many things going on, but you say, you know what? I'm going to stop this for you.
Love is sacrifice.
Yeah, it's sacrifice, right? So, I'd sit there in the morning, put my hand in my bead bag, and my mind is telling me all these different things. But I'm like, you know what, my Lord, I know it makes you happy when I recite your names. I know it makes you happy when I call out your glories. So I'm going to do it for these 2 hours. And I'll try my best. And even if my mind is swifting around and messing up and not doing the best of things, I will try my best to resituate. And even if some days I'm not enthusiastic, even if some days I don't feel like connecting with you, even if some days I feel like I'm going to try. And God doesn't want us to be the best. He just wants us to try our best. We can go back home and leave this body knowing I've tried my best for God, like that. So that's what we would normally do.
Okay.
Call out the names and try our best. And
So now I know, so you've moved out of the temple, is that right?
Yes.
And so with, obviously temple life must be very, temple life, I'm calling it temple life. But that must be very different to what you have now.
In one sense, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's my question. Because
Right.
it feels very, I mean, we can understand what it's like to a certain extent with the whole, when you're devoted to something,
Right.
you put your life for it, right? And
That's
so
it, yeah.
you surround your life around that.
it.
And
Yeah.
you call yourselves devotees, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because
yeah.
we're devoted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And so really understand kind of the whole idea of, maybe not kind of the whole practices itself, but just the idea of kind of the feeding side of it, I guess, maybe of the like surrounding yourself with the right people and in that community and praying and stuff like that. Have you got any Hare Krishnas who are not in the temple, who are like living like a normal, I want to say
In that
normal
sense,
life?
yeah. No, for sure. Yes, exactly. That's a good question.
Because it must be tough.
It is.
And it feels like,
Tell me about it.
obviously as a Christian, I can easily say if I don't go to church or if I'm not
Right.
around the right people, it's hard. It makes it harder, doesn't it?
Stay devoted, and I think to maintain your convictions as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
So for us, I mean, the temples are accessible. So I might not be living in Watford at the temple that we have, but I'm in Notting Hill, and that's pretty close to our Soho Street temple, which we have in central London. So I can always still make my way up to the temple there. And we have also different kinds of programs that we normally do on a regular basis in different places, and they're involving our meditation, and we meet and we discuss the scriptures, we chant the Lord's names, and connect. So we do have our like fellowship meetings and kind of connections like that. And most of my friends at the moment actually live outside of the temple. We've got different individuals, businessmen, you've got people in law firms, you've got people in IT from different fields who are all practitioners of bhakti yoga. And so at times, I remember one time the other day, I woke up in the morning and I was struggling to do my meditation, and so I called up my friend who was also waking up in the morning in Leicester. And so we did like our meditation together on a WhatsApp call from two different places, which was amazing. We've got live streams, so we can stream what's going on in the temple even right now and get to see what's happening when there's a class in the morning, all these activities. So because you do need that community when you are who you surround yourself with. If I'm surrounding myself with individuals who are not inspired in the path of bhakti or in the path of connecting with the Lord, then it becomes difficult for that flame of bhakti to be inspired within my heart. You know, if you're not around, if you don't go to church, if let's say for like 2-3 weeks you miss out on going to church, if you're not waking up regularly and reading your Bible, if you stop praying for a while, you do feel a void, because we require each other. And it's that community. Actually, places of religion create community where we all come together with a common purpose to love, to serve, to connect. And if you don't have that, it's very difficult. And once I moved out the temple, in the beginning, I did struggle a little bit with just familiarizing myself with where I'm living and the environment, because there's so many different changes. But I still managed to get my bearings and find my community and find my people. You know.
That was my question. Was
Right.
Has anything changed since you've moved out? And obviously, I mean, I feel like, I don't know. You could be as honest as you can, but
Right.
like even just slight things in what you believe, or like the perspective or the whole consciousness space. Like, has anything changed in that sense since you moved out of the temple? Not just the practices side of things.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So what I'd say was that has changed a lot is the practices.
Okay.
Because like in the temple, by 4 o'clock in the morning, everyone's up.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You know.
Yeah.
We're in the temple room by 4:30, and from 4:30 to 8:30, we're doing our prayers, we're doing meditation, we're studying the scriptures. Then we go out for breakfast, and then we're doing different services. We're not getting a salary, we're not getting paid.
Yeah.
You know. So
What are those different services? If you don't mind me
so
asking?
different things. So, you know, some people maybe are good with farming. So they
Okay.
go into the farm. We've got 85 acres.
Right,
So we go,
right.
you know, some people like me are good or, you know, would love to share knowledge or just have chats with people. So I was doing the KC Sock Society for like whilst I was at the temple, and I was going to different universities and doing different mindfulness discussions with individuals and talking to them about the teachings. Some people would go out on the streets and distribute the books.
Right.
How I met
Yosia.
yeah. And so, you know, based on one's ability, everyone's skill that you've got uniquely can be used in service of the Lord. So we are channeled according to your intensity. My mentor normally says, find an intensity that suits your personality in order to blossom spiritually, like that. And so we'll do that. When I left the temple, I guess the shift for me has been putting my spirituality in my center when there's all these other demands.
Yeah.
Right, which I guess is a common struggle for everyone. You know, now I'm here, I'm employed, I've got a job. This job, thank God for my job, it's similar to my practice, where I'm implementing a lot of the things I'm learning into my practice. But imagine if you've got a different job, you know, doing that, you know, and then meeting and connecting with different people in different fields and having to adjust. I guess that's just been different because in the temple, you're kind of in one bubble.
Yeah.
And then when you come out into the bigger world, it's like seeing how that bubble fits in this bigger maze of the world, which has been very difficult. And it's taking time for me to kind of, and it's a learning process every day, I could say,
Yeah.
you know, figuring out my environment, you know, and
Yeah.
everything like that.
Yeah, because I think like that life of, because when you are in a bubble, it's very, and when you're saying these things, it's very repetitive, right? It's very kind of like you're drilling it in your mind every day.
Right.
And I mean, you know, I could say the same thing to a certain extent when I pray every day. It's similar in that sense. But
Yeah.
like I could see also like, I don't, like as a devil's advocate, it's like, well, you're obviously going to believe and think things if that's what you're drilling into your mind. So it's like, I feel like when you step out of that bubble, then really things come into perspective a lot easier,
Yes.
right?
No,
And
no,
so
of course,
that's
of course.
kind of what the road
yeah,
is going down.
Yeah, like when I've come out now and I've met different individuals and just seeing how they're living their lives, I can see, okay, with what security are the teachings that Bhakti Yoga have taught me, how are they manifesting, you know?
Right.
It's like there's that statement by what's his name? He's actually Tupac Shakur. He's read the Bhagavad Gita. He says, "Real eyes realize real lies."
Yeah.
Right? And so you'll go out into the world, and you know, in your bubble of influence, maybe from the church or from you've learned certain things, certain principles. Then you go out into the bigger world, or once you leave the church, or once you leave the temple, and you'll see how these things are actually playing in the world that we're in, you know? And then it becomes, whoa. And then maybe some things, philosophically, some things might come up. you know, where you challenge certain things and you're like, well, wait, we learned this in the temple, but we're seeing this right now. In the temple, we learned that our leaders should be righteous and connecting with God. But I'm coming right now and I'm seeing that some of my leaders are atheistic. They don't have a grounding of spirituality. So how do I draw the line between the two? So you get certain different elements or differences, but I've not gotten anything that has made me feel like I should challenge what I was learning within my bubble
belief,
in that sense. But I am open. I've said if I find something that hits me better than this, I'm gonna jump for it. Why not? You know, everyone's always looking for the best thing.
Everyone's always.
Whenever you find something that's the best, of course you if you find something better, you're gonna go for it, right? That's our nature. We always look to strive for perfection, to strive for doing something better than we've done before. So if I find something better than the Bhakti Yoga tradition, of course I'm gonna grab it. But so far, I haven't found anything yet. And you know, it's sweet, it's loving, it's beautiful, and I've got a nice community of people guiding me and taking care of me. So I'm like, oh, I'm chilling, like that.
Something I want to touch on before we end, because this has been a great conversation.
We can going though, but no worries. You might have to call me again.
I know, right? Part two. But because, again, as we said, we're on a worldview series.
Right.
And we've mentioned a few times that you grew up Catholic. And then obviously now you're practicing Hare Krishna with the Bhakti Yoga.
Yeah.
What was it? Like, was there something that you realized was missing from Catholicism that you found through Bhakti Yoga? Do you know what I mean? Like, what? Because if you were satisfied or content with a certain worldview. What switched?
What made me switch? Right. So I think when my mom got diagnosed with the cancer, that was the first thing that kind of made me question, because I was like, besides that, in my past with Catholicism, not with the practice, but with some of the people in the practice, I had my own experiences, which didn't shut me down from religion because I knew it was the person's, but obviously just
which
made me...
in and of itself is very wise, especially if you were younger.
Exactly. You know, exactly. So you can probably
that's a hard thing.
What I'm talking about. But I just asked, why are bad things happening to good people? And if God truly exists, what's the goal of our existence? And I just couldn't seem to get those two answers clearly explained in the Catholic Church. I struggled. I really did try, you know, and to the point where I was just informed that, you know, it's a matter of faith. Don't ask too many questions. You just have the faith, and in that faith, you'll be, which in one sense is a powerful thing. And
but that grinds my gears.
It's also like, no. I just, faith without, you know, like actual philosophical understanding is just sentimental. And philosophical understanding without an element of faith is impersonal. But I need an element of faith and an element of philosophical science, which makes sense. And actually, we understand Bhakti Yoga to be a philosophical science. Because what's something that's scientific? You've got hypothesis, you've got your experiment, you get your conclusions. Then from those results, you get your results. Then from those results, you draw your conclusions. And that's the process of Bhakti Yoga. So when I looked through the scriptures and I studied what they gave us, like I was reading about compassion, for example. So this is one of the things that hit me. And it was like, we should have compassion for all living entities. Because just like I'm a spirit soul in this body, a cow or a dog is a spirit soul in that body. So why am I choosing to kill the cow and neglect the dog? Why am I not also killing the dog? Because that's also a spiritual being that I'm having a personal connection with. Can I have a personal connection with a cow? Yes. Can I have one with a chicken? Yes. And then in my experience, I realized actually all these animals have got personality. So, I remember I was chilling, I was at my grandmother's house because I come from Kenya. And in Kenya, we eat a lot of meat. Right. It's like a staple practice. Yeah. Obviously, that came in post-colonization. Before that, it was mostly vegetarian. But anyway, I was in my grandmother's home and there was a chicken. And it was unfortunately just about to go get slaughtered for the dinner. But anyway, this chicken came and it flew to my shoulder, funny enough, which is very, very weird. And it sat there and... at first I was freaking out, like, I want to get him off me. But then he felt comfortable and he felt some element of warmth and he laid there and he closed his eyes. And I kind of it felt similar to after my younger brother was born, which is interesting to draw the parallel. But after my younger brother was born at some point, my mom handed me my younger brother. And I remember he was just there and I was looking at him and his eyes were closed and he was just at this state of peace. And then I saw my auntie coming to grab the chicken because it was time to, and I was like, no, please don't. Like, he's chilling, just let him do his thing. So then I went back and I saw, okay, actually, this makes sense. I had compassion for that animal because as spiritual beings, we're connected to some extent, you know, and when I got that being explained in that way, it just made me feel, okay, then probably I don't need to do this. And then that's why I changed it. I don't condemn anyone who does. We have loads of people who do, but that kind of was one of the things that made me feel, oh no, if we talk about compassion, then who are we to decide a living entity's lifespan? You know, there's all these veggies. I can eat tons of protein from my lentils and dal and, you know, and chickpeas. Why do I need to kill this animal for this? It's just for my tongue, isn't it? So if I'm more compassionate, maybe I should just give that up, you know? So I got those kind of responses that made sense for me.
Because,
cohesively in a practice, and that's what made me gravitate towards it. Yeah.
So, like, really simplifying and kind of zooming out as well. Like, you went towards a direction of where you actually felt like your questions were getting answers.
Yes. Yeah. And where I was experiencing. Because if you're not experiencing God, if you're not, you know, like, you've probably been in, like, a meeting and you hear someone give, like, a very deep revelation of how God has transformed their life. Like, we had these guys from AA who one of them, he's joined us at the temple, but he at first, when he started going for his AA meetings, was going to the church. And he got his epiphany that he should connect with God in the church. And just observing how sincere he was and how brightened he was in his experience. Of course, it moves you. You know, it really, really moves you. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what we're striving for. That's what we're looking for. The space that is moving you in loving God. Because we all know in the back of our hearts what our limitations are. Besides, okay, we can shut down whatever everyone sees that we do. But you know, inside, within your heart, within your core of your being, what lies. You know where your heart is. You know what's rooted within. And so when you actively make that choice to be in service, not for anyone, but for yourself. In the scriptures, actually, it says, when you turn to God, most of the time, people will abandon you. You find people who will neglect you, will judge you and criticize you for actually turning towards the Lord. In this age that we're in, that becomes a much more prominent thing. We're in an age where people are somewhat damning towards the Lord in many unfortunate ways. Less religious people talking about drugs, sex, and money, that's what is becoming most popular. People, but a gospel song with the same beats and the same kind of hype will not get the same amount of following. It's the world that we're in. So to find sincere parts of ourselves that actually want to experience that truth, at the end of the day, if you can get that, then you're a fortunate being. Like that.
There you go. there you go. Great.
Yeah.
Well, we do need to wrap it up.
I know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
We'll get kicked out of our studio.
Yeah,
But no, I want to
that's
say
what
thank you
happened.
though, because it's so nice, and I think I appreciate the fact that you guys are even instigating this, because we do need this common medium, and I feel like in many ways we do connect, although we have maybe different philosophical differences, but the heart's still there. You know, and I don't feel like I'm sitting with anyone who's judging me or making me feel
good,
you know, which is great.
Yeah,
and
good.
And the same, I'm not judging as well, and we can all
Yeah.
connect and find things that connect us. So thank you for creating this platform and space, and for having me.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure. As we said, we've been trying to get you on for so long.
Yeah,
I am so happy
I'm
that it happened.
sorry.
No,
Honestly,
it's-
the timing was perfect.
Yeah,
the
it was.
timing ended up being
God's
perfect.
timing's the best time.
It is. It
isn't
really is. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ian. Guys, yeah, I feel like we only scratch the surface of this
Yeah.
conversation.
Call me for part 2.
Honestly.
I will not complain. It's nice, and I'd also
Hey,
want
maybe
to
come
learn as
soon.
well. So it's great.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Brilliant. Thank
Well,
you so much, Ian.
Yes, thank you, Ian, for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for watching/listening, however you are joining us. Remember, you can find us on all of the typical platforms. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, every other streaming platform, and Facebook. Not Facebook.
Instagram.
Sorry, my age just showed. Instagram and TikTok under the anchor of the week.
That was good.
Remember, guys, attack topics, not people. And we will see you soon.